This is your brain. This is your brain on Alzheimer's disease, basically. What happens in Alzheimer's disease is the brain shrinks. Cells die. This area right here, that's memory, or at least one of your primary pieces of your brain responsible for memory. That here is this little sliver right there. That's why Alzheimer's disease hits memory systems first. There's a basic biological reason. The plaques and tangles in biology hit that area of the brain earliest. Then it spreads elsewhere. That's why later on you get other things. But very early in most patients you have a memory loss. Sorry. So why is a blood test for the disease important? I'm a clinical neuropsychologist by training. I lived 1,500 miles away when my grandmother was starting to show signs of Alzheimer's disease. So I had to walk, push, kick, and drag my family through the diagnostic process because they didn't want to do it. And two, they couldn't find anyone. They couldn't find anyone to go see. They didn't know what to do. The primary care doc didn't know what to do with them. Said, I don't know what's going on. It might be Alzheimer's disease. Send you to the neurologist. Went to the neurologist, wrong neurologist. That neurologist didn't specialize in Alzheimer's disease, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in my opinion, the diagnostic process is broke. It's completely broke. It's not that it's bad. It's broke. What is this current gold standard? It's a specialty clinic. Dementia specialist, physician, most of the time neurologist or geriatrician, sometimes a psychiatrist. But dementia specialist, I promise you, not all neurologists know anything about Alzheimer's disease. You do blood work. Why do you do blood work? To rule out other things. Okay? That's the point of the blood work. Brain imaging. Why do you do brain imaging? To rule out other things. There's not an MRI scan that's going to tell you you have Alzheimer's disease. Confirmation at autopsy. So the gold standard to diagnose someone is to diagnose them after they're dead. Kind of a problem, don't you think? Especially for someone like me who's a scientist that wants to prevent the disease, treat the disease. I'd like to see people pre-mortem. So you have now some really interesting and fascinating things. So there's now what's called a brain scan, an amyloid PET scan. Beta amyloid and tau, plaques and tangles. Plaques, beta amyloid, tau, tangles. That's all it is. And those are just proteins. That's all they are. They're proteins that just become abnormally formed and they clump together like glue for the plaques or the tangles, basically get embedded into the neurons and the neurons die. You can do a PET scan of that and see the plaques. We also now have PET scans to see the tangles. Has anyone well, I'm not going to ask that question. People in here have had loved ones, like myself, who have been diagnosed with cancer. Was a PET scan how they got diagnosed? No. PET scan is confirmatory diagnosis. Why is that? Do you know, did you ever see your bill for your PET scan? Yeah. Even when your insurance covers it, it's still, your stomach basically hits your toes. Because a cheap PET scan's about $5,000. And that's a cheap PET scan, by the way. I've seen bills over 20 grand for one scan. This, at a minimum, is $5,000 a pop. So obviously, not going to be used for our frontline screening purposes. Just not going to happen. The other thing is, how many PET scanners are there? Not enough to do brain scans on the 40 million Americans age 65 and above.